Hey Moonies! It's time for a whole new season of Watch Sailor Moon Learn Japanese! So I started a series pretty much a year ago, I think it might have been a little less than a year ago, where I took the very first episode of Sailor Moon Classic and I broke down every single word in the dialogue and taught Japanese based off of that. Today I'm going to be looking at the first episode of Season 3, or Sailor Moon S, which is my favorite. It's objectively the best season. And I'm going to go through, just like I did with the first episode of the very first season, I'm going to go through the dialogue and explain what everything means one word at a time, and from that hopefully you will learn Japanese. This video is intended for intermediate to advanced learners of Japanese. Even if you're a beginner, I'm still going to explain every single grammar rule and word that I come across, but I'm probably gonna gloss over the more entry-level words. So I do have a series for beginners called Japanese for Beginners. As of the recording of this, I have 22 episodes up already, so you can check that out if you're a beginner. But beginners are welcome to stay. I think it's just going to be a little better paced for intermediate to advanced learners. And then a general reminder, if I'm speaking too quickly or too slowly for your liking. This is true with every YouTube video. Fun little hack here. Go to the settings and click on the speed and you can change the speed at which I am talking. So now that I have all that out of the way, let's get started. Okay, so the very first line of season 3, 沈黙が迫ってくる. And it comes up again and again and again and again. So let's break that down. Chinmoku means silence. Ga is that particle. And then sematte-kuru, so that comes from the verb semaru, which is to advance on something, like to close in on something. It's often used to describe an army, like closing in on another army or a target. So you do the te-kuru form of that verb. A refresher for some of you, but maybe this is new info for some of you. If it's the te form of the verb plus iku or kuru, then it's describing sort of what direction that verb is happening. So a really good example is, here's a manga. If I say ochiru is the verb for to fall. If I say manga ga ochite kuru, that was probably really loud, it hit my laptop. It means the manga is falling towards the speaker, me. So if I say manga ga ochite kuru, what I'm explaining, what I'm describing is the manga is falling towards me. But then if I say manga ga ochite iku, that would be if it's falling away from me. Oh, I dropped it off the edge of the bed. So now manga ga ochite iku. It's falling away from me versus falling towards me. So chinmoku ga sematte kuru, that means the silence is closing in on me, the speaker, they, and also on us, because all of her friends, the other senshi, are frozen statues. They're incapacitated somehow. So silence is closing in on us. I localized that. You may have noticed when I subtitle this, by the way, I picked all this out by ear because I scoured the Japanese interwebs and I could not find a fan-made or official script in Japanese of this episode. So I transcribed it by ear. So the kanji and kana you see was me transcribing it. And then the translation you saw at the bottom was also me. You can compare it against the Hulu translation or whatever. I translated as the silence is coming. And the reason why I did that is I made it the silence just to give it a little more weight. And then is coming, I did is coming instead of is closing in because frankly, I don't know, I think is closing in just doesn't sound very cool. But the silence is coming. It kind of reminds me of Doctor Who when they're that ominous, the silence is coming kind of thing. It kind of reminds me of that. So I just did is coming, and also the kuru part of te kuru, it's coming, it's closing in, coming. So that's why I localized it as the silence is coming. Okay, dame, that means no good, it's no use, or no, or oh no. Kanawanai, so kanau is the verb we're working with here, and that means to grant a wish. So if somebody says kanawanai though, just by itself isolated like that, it usually means it's not going to happen, it's not going to go my way, I'm going to lose. It kind of means that. Like my wish to win is not going to be granted. That's kind of what it means if you're just saying like kanawanai by itself. Also, if you say it by itself, or like if you're talking about another person, like you in relation to another person, and I say like kanawanai, that means like I don't hold a candle to that person, like that person will defeat me kind of thing. So it's that sort of sentiment. So I localize that as no, I can't fight it. So notice how I kind of expanded upon that sentiment, that complicated, nuanced sentiment of, oh, it's not going to happen for me. My wish to win will not come true. And because it's a very short sounding phrase, there's not that many syllables, I wouldn't have very much room on the screen to put a bunch of subtitles in such a short period of time. I can't fight it, just expresses the sentiment really well.
あなたはメシア。お願い。みんな助けて。待って。
Rei says, あなたはメシア? So, あなたは, as for you, Meshia is a gairaigo, it's Messiah, basically. So, are you ... the Messiah? That's pretty straightforward. There's not really many other ways you could tweak that. Onegai. So that means please. Minna o tasukete. You might notice when you listen to her, or you can go back and listen to it, she's like minna o tasukete. Like you can barely hear the O part. She kind of glides from minna o. I had to listen to it closely, but I'm pretty sure she said minna o tasukete. Doesn't quite matter what it was. I mean, I guess if she left out the O particle, it's a little less clear what she's saying, but I'm pretty sure she said minna o tasukete. So minna, everyone, but it's a common beginner's mistake if you're going to translate that as everyone, especially if you like go up to a group of people and say minna. I hate it when in subs, like the translator translates that as everyone. Who says that? Who goes up to a group of friends and goes everyone or everyone? I don't say that. Do you? Like, let me know if you say that, because I don't think anybody actually says that. It's more like my friends or the girls, the guys, whatever pronouns you use. But yeah, that's why I translated that as please, please save my friends. That's what Minna was in that case. Speaking of save, tasukete. If you're an intermediate learner, you probably already know what this is, but it's the te form of the verb tasukeru, which is to save or to help. But more like tetsudau is more like to help or assist, kind of like I'm going to tetsudau my okasan in like making dinner or something. But tasukeru is kind of more like to save somebody. It can be to help someone too, but more like to save somebody. So please, please save my friends. And then Rei goes, matte! So if you're an anime fan, at any level, you probably know that matte means wait or don't go, actually, is how I decided to localize it, because I felt that that expressed kind of her urgency and her desperation more than simply wait. So don't go.
地球崩壊の予感。謎の新戦士出現。
And then the title screen. All right, so you have this like cheerful music with like Chikyuu Houkai no Yokan. So Chikyuu is the earth, Houkai is destruction. So earth destruction. Basically, that's the apocalypse. Yay! No, so that's the apostrophe S, the possessive particle. Yokan is like a premonition or like an omen or a sign. So Chikyuu Houkai no Yokan. Sign of the apocalypse. Nazo no means like of mystery or mysterious, the unidentified. So Shin-Senshi, so you might know what Senshi is if you like Sailor Moon, it's kind of in the title. So guardian, soldier, whatever you want to think of it as. Shin, you'll see this kanji prefix a lot in things because it means new. Kind of like Neo, I guess, that prefix Neo. So Shin-Senshi would be like the new Senshi, the new soldiers, guardians, whatever you want to call them. Shutsugen is like appear, basically, make an appearance, appear. So I localize that as a sign of the apocalypse. Mysterious new sailors join the fight. So I translated Senshi as sailors. I just don't think soldier fits. I don't think guardian really fits either, honestly. I think sailors makes more sense. Call them sailors. And then instead of appear, which just kind of sounds vague, I just expanded that. Join the fight. They're not joining the team, but they're like on the scene. They're joining the fight. They actually do join the fight in this episode. Spoiler alert. So join the fight. And then Rei wakes up and we discovered that all those noises were actually just Usagi next to her, like sleeping and breathing very loudly in her sleep. And Ami says,
どうしたのレイちゃん。なんだかうなされてたよ。あ、ごめん、なんでもないの。
どうしたのレイちゃん? So どうしたの? It's better to just think of that as a phrase all in itself. What's wrong? Rei-chan. So what's wrong, Rei? And then Mako-chan says, なんだかうなされてたよ. So なんだか means like in some way or another, or somehow or another, something like something. It's kind of like. Unasareteta. So unasareteta comes from the verb unasareru, which means like kind of what Rei was doing. It's like when you're asleep and you're like, it's like being restless in your sleep and moaning, that kind of thing. So it has the teta form of unasareru, that verb. So that means you were doing this verb. So you were murmuring in your sleep. And then it ends with that yo, which is this sort of like, I'll inform you that. I declare, I have something to tell you for sure with confidence. And then they says, ごめん. So, just means like, And then ごめん means sorry. なんでもないの. So, なんでもない, very, very useful phrase. It's nothing. Forget it, whatever. And then no, that no at the end, it's from ndes or no des. If you end a sentence with no des or ndes instead of just des or, da or no ending at all, it means that you're explaining something versus just making a statement. So instead of just saying it's nothing, she's explaining it's nothing, as in like, oh, no, it's okay. Like she's telling them it's nothing so that they will not worry about her. And like they were asking her for an explanation, so she's giving them the explanation of it was nothing, even though it totally wasn't nothing. So I translated that as, oops, sorry, it was nothing. And then Rei-chan says, ただちょっとおかしな夢見ちゃって. So ただ is just, like it's just something. It's just the case that something. ちょっと is like a little bit, kinda. So ただちょっと is like, I just kinda, like, except kinda, おかしな夢. So おかしな, that's basically the na form of the adjective おかし. This happens sometimes. There are a few e adjectives that you can also conjugate with na, like 大きい can be expressed as 大きな. 小さい can be expressed as 小さな. And this is another example of that. おかしい can be expressed as おかしな. And there's a reason why they did this particular, I think anyway, it's a little unclear, but there's a reason I think why they did おかしな instead of おかし. I don't know, おかしな夢, I think that sounds more like it's what more people would say too. But anyway, おかしな夢, dream, 見ちゃって. So this is the Chikyuu version of the verb 見る. 見る means to see. It's one of your Japanese 101 verbs. But if they change the ru to chau, mi chau, that means you're doing this verb and it's a bad thing that you did the verb and or like you've done this verb to completion. So miru is just like you see something. Mi chau means like you see something that you shouldn't have or you saw something bad, something like that. And then it's the te form of the verb. And if there's a hanging te form at the end of a sentence, especially with like a ... trailing off voice, it implies like, oh, I saw this really strange dream and ... Like there's more to this story, but I'm going to kind of leave it there. So saw a dream is the Japanese idiom for having a dream. So I just had a strange dream, kind of like that. Minako asks, おかしな夢? So she's just repeating that phrase with a question mark. So a strange dream. And then good old Usagi. Side note, I used to hate Usagi. She used to really annoy me, but once I learned Japanese and like I understand her in Japanese, she's like so much funnier. I don't really know how else to explain it. Anyway, she starts laughing.
私もおかしな夢見ちゃってさ。
私もおかしな夢見ちゃってさ. So she's repeating that same phrase again. So 私も, me too. おかしな夢見ちゃって. That's that whole phrase. Like I saw / had a strange dream. and it was a bad thing that I saw this strange dream, but she adds a sa to the end of that. Teen girls and guys, I almost said teen girls, but no, guys do this too. Teenagers do this a lot. A lot of people end their sentences with sa. If you end your sentence with a sa like that, it's kind of like, hey, listen, I got the goods. I got some juicy gossip for you. It's kind of like, you know, I was da-ba-da-ba-da. And you know, it has this sort of like, I'm going to tell you some really juicy tidbits here, and I'm going to keep going. There's more to it. It's kind of like, I was having a strange dream too, you see, and something. That's a little more old-timey English, but that's really the feel of you see, of sa. So, ha ha ha, whoa, I had a strange dream too. So here is a pun that I'm not sure they intended or not. I think they intended it, but I'm not actually sure. And I did not leave it in the localization. But anyway, okashi means sweets, and it's also an adjective that means strange. So they had an okashi na yume, as in a strange dream. Usagi had an okashi na yume, like a dream about sweets, basically. It sounds like she's still using the na particle. So she's like literally saying, I had a strange dream. But your brain can also pick up on like, oh, I also had an okashi dream as well. It was about okashi, sweets. So fun little sneaky pun in there.
私がアイスクリームの食べ過ぎで病院に行くわけよ。そしたらそこにマモちゃんが花火団子の食べ過ぎで担ぎ込まれちゃって。
私がアイスクリームの食べ過ぎで So, atashi, again, I, the very feminine, a little younger version of I. Aisukurimu, ice cream, no tabesugi. So, tabesugi, tabesugiru means to eat too much. Taberu is to eat. If you add the sugiru to the end of a verb stem, so tabesugiru, that means to eat too much. But they've converted sugiru itself into the stem version of itself. So a verb stem is basically a verb like in its dictionary form. So it ends in ru or u or ku or gu. It does not end in masu, basically. So the verb in its dictionary form, and then you basically just delete the final syllable in it. So sugiru is its dictionary form. Delete the ru, and it's just sugi, and that's its stem, its verb stem. And tabe, same thing. It's the stem of taberu. So since it's tabesugi, it's basically turning the concept of eating too much, it's turning it from a verb into like more like a noun. Or like a concept, a thing, you know, that she did. So, aisukurimu no tabesugi. So, the eating of, the too much eating of ice cream, or the eating of too much ice cream, basically. It turns it into a noun, or like an event in this case. So, aisukurimu no tabesugi de, so because of, by means of, that particle de, eating too much ice cream, byoin ni iku wake yo. So, byoin ni iku just by itself means to go to the hospital. And then wake, that's kind of one of those difficult to explain, like, colloquialisms that come at the end of a sentence. I brought this up in another video before. There's a character from Fruits Basket, and I don't remember his name, and I didn't remember his name in the last video when I talked about him, and I'll probably put his picture next to my face. Anyway, he's the character who turns into the ram, and he ends like all of his sentences with wake. And it's sort of a sarcastic-y way, sassy way of ending your sentence. But wake means like the reason, like on itself, its literal meaning is reason. So it's like, I OD'd on ice cream and had to go to the hospital. そしたらそこに, so そしたら, like when that happened, or then the next thing that happened. そこに, so そこ would be like the hospital. She had to go to the hospital, and then そこ, the hospital, that thing she was referencing in the last sentence. そこに, so in そこ, in the hospital, at the hospital. マモちゃんが, so マモちゃん, mamoru, her boyfriend ga hanami dango. So hanami dango is I'll put a picture of it next to my face. It's like little like dango. Most of you probably know what dango is. They're like rice dumplings, and they're in cutesy little like springy sakura kinds of colors. And so that's what they are. So hanamidango no tabesugi, there it is again. So Usagi was ice cream no tabesugi de, and Mamo-chan is hanamidango no tabesugi de. So by means of the overeating of hanamidango. Katsugi kumarechatte. So katsugi kumareru would be like that verb in its ru form. And that means basically to be gurneyed somewhere, to be like carried. And actually there's sort of like a interesting, I don't know if it was an intended double meaning, but hanamidango, it's like, makes you think of matsuri. And in matsuri, you katsugi kumareru an omikoshi, a shrine, like you carry it, kind of like you would a gurney. And now he's eating too many hanamidango, and now he's being gurneyed, kind of like you would an omikoshi at a festival. I'm not 100% certain that's what they were going for, but I'm pretty sure they were. Like that's what popped into my mind, and I thought it was extra funny because of that, so I think that's what they were thinking. But anyway, so chatte, so again, it's that chau ending of the verb, instead of just the regular dictionary form of the verb. So he was being gurneyed in, and it was a bad thing. Like, oh my God, uh-oh, he was being gurneyed in to the hospital because he ate too many hanamidango. So I localized that as, and when I got there, Mama was being gurneyed in for eating too many hanami dumplings. So this is one of those localization dilemmas. So it's one of those localization dilemmas where you're not sure how you should handle hanamidango. There's a lot of different schools of thought there. A lot of your anime enthusiast purists will say, oh, well, you should just keep it as hanamidango because like it gives us an opportunity to learn about what hanamidango are. The clients that I usually translate for prefer a more like full localization where anything that's like, if it's something that like definitely all Westerners know, like sushi, of course I keep it as sushi, but something like dango, that's not quite like laymen, people who aren't really into anime probably don't know what dango are, and then they definitely don't know what hanami is. So it would be really jarring, and it would take them out of the story because they'd be like, what, hanami dango? What, am I missing something? What's this? It's kind of like when you're reading a fantasy novel and like all of these new like non-existent terms that the author just invented are in there, and then there's like all these footnotes and you have to stop and it takes you out of the story to look at the footnote. I can see both sides of this. Like I think on the one hand, you shouldn't like change it to something completely not what it is because, I don't know, that's just kind of weird. But at the same time, you shouldn't keep it exactly in Japanese when a lot of people in your audience are going to be confused. So I decided to compromise and keep hanami as hanami and then dango, change that to dumpling. Hanami is like the name of the dango, so keep it at hanami and then change dango to dumplings.
ばったり出会ったところがこれまた病院の調理場ってさ面白くない？
ばったり出会ったところが Okay, so ばったり出会った。ばったり kind of means to run into, and then 出会う, the verb that comes right after that, finishes that sort of sentiment. So 出会う is to encounter, to meet, to see a person. So 出会った is the past tense version of that. So ばったり出会った when we bumped into each other. Tokoro. So the tokoro means a place. So at the place of the story, by the time we ran into each other, ga, and then tokoro ga also by itself can mean like, by the way. I mean, just when you thought the story was going one way, it turns another way. So that's kind of what that whole sentiment means. Like, when we bumped into each other, plot twist, koremata. So that, again, that phrase, koremata, is kind of, again, like plot twist. You wouldn't believe this. I mean, it literally means this again, but it does not mean that at all. It just means like, you wouldn't believe it. Or get this. Like, I was already telling you this really unbelievable thing, and I'm gonna top that with this even more unbelievable thing. 病院, hospital, no, choriba. So choriba is basically like literally a place where cooking takes place. Chori is like cooking, ba is place, so kitchen. So 病院の choriba would be like the hospital kitchens. Tesa! So again, ending it with the sa, that, teenagery sort of, people that are not teenagers can still totally end their sentences with sa. But yeah, it's like when it's often used when you're telling a story about something. You're gonna be like, oh yeah, and then it was like this, and then this happened, and then it was like this. It gives that sort of mood to the whole thing. So I localized that whole thought as, and when we found each other, plot twist, we were in the hospital kitchen, and then she's slapping her knee and laughing, because that is pretty funny. But the other girls do not think it is funny. They're very serious about it, and so Usagi says, "Omoshirokunai?" So, omoshirokunai, even if you're a beginning level student, I've already covered this in my Japanese for beginners videos. It's the negative version of the adjective omoshiroi, which is interesting or funny. I like to think of it as amusing because that kind of covers both bases, or entertaining almost. Omoshirokunai means it's not entertaining, not amusing, not interesting. So she's literally asking not interesting or not amusing or not entertaining. And you may have noticed I translated that as, why aren't you laughing? And that was a localization choice, partly because omoshirokunai has some nuances to it. So I've seen this come up a few times also in manga. If there's a scene where like there's one character who's laughing it up about something or whatever, and then there's this other person who's like, and then there'll be an arrow pointing to that character saying, omoshirokunai hito. So if you've taken beginner Japanese, even if you're like just in my Japanese for Beginners series, omoshirokunai hito literally means not interesting person. But if you say omoshirokunai, like if I'm using omoshirokunai to describe your emotions, that's kind of what that omoshirokunai hito arrow means. It means not amused, or this person's not having it, or this person's not amused kind of thing. It doesn't mean literally this person is not amusing. It means like this person is not enthused, this person is pissed off about this. So, and they're all not laughing. And I thought it was just kind of funnier if it's like, why aren't you laughing? It's like, that was a hilarious story. Come on, guys.
面白いけど、今はそんな夢を見てる時じゃないはずでしょ。うさぎちゃん、一昨日の実力テストできたのかい
？Ami-chan answers, 面白いけど. So she's basically responding to Usagi's 面白くない? She's responding with the affirmative, omoshiroi. Now, sometimes, all the time, actually, I don't know why I said sometimes, if somebody asks you a question in Japanese that involves a verb, you often answer it with that same verb. So, like a very simple example, someone might hand me a piece of cake and say, taberu. That literally means, would you like to eat some of this? All she's saying is the verb eat, but it means like, you know, would you like to eat this piece of cake, basically. My response would be like, taberu. Which means, eat. But really what I mean is yes. Thank you. Yes, please. Or if she says, keiki taberu, like, would you like to eat this cake? Instead of responding with ie, like no, literally, I'd say, tabenai. And that's if we're like really tight and close and, you know, because if I'm like, tabenai, that's kind of rude. But it's rude to say no in Japanese. But, you know, I would often respond with the negative version of the verb instead of no. So Usagi is asking her a question, and then with a double negative, single negative, are you not interested? Literally is what she's asking them. Ami responded literally with, it is an interesting story, or it is an amusing story. So Usagi asks, like, why aren't you laughing? I had her answer, it's a funny story, but, 今はそんな夢を見ている時じゃないはずでしょ? So 今は, so as for now, そんな夢. So そんな, I have a video about the kosoado words if you're a little unclear on those still. But そんな, あんな, どんな, こんな means like this kind of. But if it's そんな, that means that kind of thing related to you, the listener, which in this case is Usagi. So そんな夢, so that dream of which you speak, your dream, that kind of dream, Usagi, of yours. O, so the verb is going to happen to yume, the dream. Miteiru, so this is miru again, the verb to see, but it's the teiru version of the verb, which I'm going to cover very soon in my Japanese for Beginners series. But it is the verb that means, it's the form of the verb miru, which means the verb is happening right now. So ima wa, right now, that kind of dream, seeing, having that kind of dream, toki. So if you follow a verb with toki, it means the time to do this verb. So, and then often it's going to be followed up with janai, which this one is, and janai means not. So the whole thought, そんな夢を見ている時じゃない means not the time or place to be having that kind of dream. So you just kind of rearrange the order of all the words in the sentence completely backwards. And then you're ending that whole thought with hazu. So hazu, it can take on a lot of different nuances depending on what form the verb was in right before it. But it kind of means like supposed to be. So now is not supposed to be the time where you're having that kind of dream about sweets and hospital kitchens and stuff like that. And then the desho, isn't it the case that now is not supposed to be the time for you to be having those kinds of dreams? And what that is in good English is, it's a funny story, but now's not the time to dwell on such silly dreams. And I could have gone with, but don't you think now's not the best time to dwell on such silly dreams? And maybe I did in post. I wrote in my notes that that's how I'm going to translate it, but you know, I always second guess myself, so maybe I changed it in post. But anyway, there's two ways that you can interpret what she said. And then Mako-chan supports Ami-chan by saying Usagi-chan. Ototoi no jitsuryoku testo. So ototoi means the day before yesterday. So ototoi no would be like of the day before yesterday. So jitsuryoku testo. Testo is test. Jitsuryoku means literally like true ability. So true ability test. It's really a proficiency test or like a practice test. In a way, like sometimes it'll count for credit or sometimes it won't. So ototoi no jitsuryoku testo. The proficiency test of the day before yesterday. Dekita no kai. So dekita, this verb has a lot of nuances. It's the past tense of dekiru, which means to be able to do something. So dekita was able to do. So it can mean sometimes finished, like if I am sewing a dress and then I hold it up and I say dekita. You've probably noticed people in anime doing things like that all the time. It means I'm done, I did it. It's that kind of sentiment. But it can also kind of mean like do a good job. And in this case, that's what it means. So, dekita no kai. Kai, that's an interesting, sometimes old-timey way of just saying ka at the end of a sentence for a question marker. It comes across to me at least as like softer. I feel like softer characters tend to use that. So, and Mako-chan is a very soft character, so that suits her pretty well. And she's also kind of taking on a motherly tone here as well. It kind of also comes across to me as motherly. So good on them for making Mako-chan sound like that. So, Usagi, how'd you do on the last proficiency test? And I said last proficiency test instead of the proficiency test from the day before yesterday. We don't have a word for the day before yesterday like the Japanese language does. Like ototoi is a nice clean word to express the day before yesterday. But we don't have that word, so it sounds really clunky and weird if you translate ototoi as the day before yesterday. So unless it's absolutely necessary that it really be the day before yesterday, I usually just translate it as like sometimes the other day, but even that doesn't really fit that well either because it's 3 words instead of 1 clean word. So I often just translate it as yesterday or last week or the last proficiency test, pretty much. Any of those work. And then the text, which is partially obscured by Usagi, but it says, zenzen dame datta yo ne. So zenzen means absolutely if you're combining it with like a negative. So sometimes you can combine it with like a good word as well. But usually it's supposed to be, grammatically it's supposed to be combined with a bad word. And it is dame, bad, no good, datta, past tense. So absolutely was bad, yo ne. I have a video talking in detail about the difference like between yo, ne, and yo ne at the ends of sentences. But like yo ne is kind of like, I'm agreeing with what you said and I'm like, and we're sharing a moment here of like agreeing about this thing. So zenzen dame datta yo ne. Usagi just kind of like talking to herself like, yup. I totally bombed that one. And I localized it as, I sucked, thank you. Because yeah, that yone thing is kind of like friendly and like sort of feel to it. So I added the thank you at the end to be kind of cheeky and funny, like people say at the ends of things. Usagi laughs again. まあ、0点ってことはないと思うんですけど。 So, see, this is another, like, it's funny. I don't know how to describe it better, but usagi is just so much funnier in Japanese. Anyway, so ma means well, and it's kind of a feminine-ish way of saying well. Reiten means literally 0 points, so a 0%, a score of 0. Te, so anytime you have like a small tsu with a te after something, you're basically putting the thing that came before it in quotes. So, reiten te koto wa nai. So, well, I don't think it would be like a 0. To omou, that's the I think. Koto is like a thing. It can mean so many different things. Yeah, so the whole thought, reiten te koto wa nai, that means like not the situation of it being a 0%. To omou, so I think it's not the situation of a 0%. And then again, you're finishing it with desu, so that she's explaining something. She's not just making a statement, she's explaining her position on this. She's kind of defending herself here. And she's using keigo, the polite form, as you see. And in the last line, like Mako-chan did take on sort of a motherly tone with her. Usagi-chan. Dekita no kai. Like she's taking on that softer motherly kind of tone. And Usagi like responds in keigo, being all polite because she's kind of being backed into a corner. And she's ending it with kedo as well, which literally means but. So, but it doesn't exactly mean but in this context. It's more like, well, it's at least not a 0. ... trail off. I just won't mention the other part. So I localize that as, well, I'm confident I at least scored above a 0.
私たち3年生になったのよ。高校受験まで1年もないのよ。
Then Ami rebukes her some more. 私たち3年生になったのよ. So 私たち us 3年. Notice there's no wa or ga. You do not always need to use particles. So 3年生, third year students, in their case middle school specifically, ni natta. So x ni naru is become x. X ni natta is became x. So 3年生になった became third year students. We became third year students. No yo. Like, you know, I'm explaining this to you firmly, Usagi. So I localize that as we're in our final year of middle school now. I added the now at the end, just it's like, before things might have been fun and games, but now we're in our third year of middle school. I didn't say we've become third year students because it just sounds weird, but we're in our third year of middle school now. If we had words like we do in high school for like freshman, junior, sophomore, senior, I would have said we're seniors now. And that would have flowed so much better, but we don't really have those words. I mean, I could have said we're ninth graders now, but that still is kind of weird because for many people, myself included, ninth grade was the first year of high school. So we're in our final year of middle school now. Koukou juken made. So koukou juken. Koukou is high school, juken is like entrance exams, so high school entrance exams, made, so something, made is until something. So koukou juken made, until the high school entrance exams, ichi nen mo nai, there's not even 1 year. If you say something mo nai, it's like there's not even something. So ichi nen mo nai, no yo, and again, she's doing that firm explainy thing. So we have less than 1 year to study for our high school exams. And then Usagi answers, hi. So I translated that as yes, ma'am, because hi is the more polite version of And we kind of have this dynamic going on now with Mako-chan and Ami-chan being the motherly, you know, voices of reason. Like, Usagi, time to get serious and study. Usagi's like, yes, ma'am.
戦いで遅れた分を取り戻さないと。後悔さっきのたらこっていうものね。
Tatakai de okureta bun. So tatakai means like fighting. Oh, and fun note there with tatakai, it comes from the verb tatakau. And if it's tatakau, it's a verb, but if it's tatakai, this is a little more advanced grammar rule. I have not gotten to it in my Japanese for Beginners series, but it changes the verb into the noun version of itself. So tatakai is just like the fighting as a noun. De, so because of, by means of fighting, okureta. So okureru is the verb that means to be late. Okureta means was late, were late. So we're late due to fighting. Bun, so the portion of lateness that we got from the fighting. O, so put that whole thought in brackets and a verb is about to happen to the portion that they got late from all of the fighting that they were doing. Torimodosanaito. So torimodosu is a verb that means to regain something, to get it back. So torimodosanai means to not get something back, but then she's ending it with to. And you would finish that sentiment with torimodosanai to ikenai. Ikenai means it's a bad thing, it won't work. So if we don't get this back, bad things will happen. But she doesn't have to say the ikenai part because she said the to. We already kind of know the ikenai part's implied. So that whole thing actually means we need to make up for all the time we lost when we were saving the world. I changed fighting to saving the world because fighting just... We need to make up for all the time we lost when we were fighting sounds like when they were like squabbling amongst themselves, fighting over boys or something, but it's like they were fighting evil. I guess I could have said fighting evil, but saving the world sounded funnier, basically. Because it's true, it's literally true. They were like saving the world twice, or 3 times actually, if you count the Makaiju arc. But yeah, then like, oh shit, now we have to study for high school. This sucks. And then Minako jumps in with, one of my favorite parts about Minako, her kotowazas that she butchers. So she says, 航海先のたらこっていうものね. So 航海先のたらこ is the kotowaza, or the saying, the wise sagely saying that she is butchering. So te, small tsu, te, you. That means they say, blah, 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 mono ne. So again, it's that no ne thing at the end. It's like she's explaining something. It's like, well, you know, as they say, 航海先のたらこ. And they don't actually say that. We're going to find out what they're saying. So, koukaisaki means like at the end, it literally means at the end of regret. And then tarako is like fish roe, basically. It's like caviar, really. It's a specific kind of caviar. So it's like the caviar at the end of regret is like what she's saying. Now, the actual saying is koukaisaki ni tatazu, which means like not standing at the end of your repentance. That's literally what it means. But what the saying really means is repentance comes too late. Like once you're like standing at the end of your regret, like you can't really repent it. Like you're already there. You've already done the thing that you're regretting. So like you can't really repent because you've already done it. That's kind of literally what that means. But Minako's saying, there's tarako, there's caviar at the end of your regrets. That's what they say, as you know. So this presented another localization quandary to me. This kind of joke is not at all funny if you keep it in Japanese. Most Western people don't know what tarako is. They don't know what koukaisaki is either. They don't know that saying. They don't know the kotowaza. If you kept it literal, like not standing at the end, it just does not work. Period. Does not work to translate that literally. So when you're dealing with puns, you basically have to like look at what it was supposed to be and then do a word association with it. So repentance comes too late. There's another part of the joke that follows up later, and you'll see why I translated it as they say, breakfast comes too late. So I changed repentance to breakfast, and you'll see why I did that later. But no mention of tarako anyway, because it just doesn't rhyme with anything in the English. It just would confuse people and they wouldn't be laughing. They'd be scratching their heads and being like, am I missing something? Yes, you're missing something because it was badly localized. Next line.
ちょっと待って、うさぎちゃん。今の覚えちゃダメよ。正しくは後悔先に立たずよ。
Okay, so Ami catches Minako's folly and she says, chotto matte. So chotto, again, it literally means a little bit, but it often means like, whoa, hey. Matte, wait, Usagi-chan. So at the beginning of this episode, I translated matte as don't go, and that's not wrong. Like, that was the sentiment Rei was expressing. Wait, don't go. But in this case, Ami is expressing a sentiment, wait, like, stop, time out. Wait a minute, Usagi. And I translated, I localized that actually as, time out, Usagi. Like, whoa. Don't listen to her. Ima no oboe cha dame yo. So ima, now, no o. So ima no, the thing of now. So she's referencing basically the thing that Minako just said. Ima Minako ga itta koto o. basically the Minako ga itta koto part is like in parentheses. It's implied. That thing that Minako said just now, o, 覚えちゃダメよ. So 覚える is to remember or to learn or like to memorize. But if you change it to cha and then add dame, it means you shouldn't do that, or you can't do that. It's wrong to do that, or please don't do that. That's bad. So don't remember what she just said. And I localized that as don't memorize that, because they're like in a study session right now and they're like memorizing formulas and stuff. And yeah, she doesn't want Usagi. She doesn't want that to go into Usagi's brain. And then she goes on to explain tadashiku wa, so the correct version of this. Tadashi is like correct. So tadashiku is the adverb version of that. So correctly put, it would be koukai saki ni tatazu yo. So she's saying like correctly put, it would be this. So it's supposed to be repentance comes too late. And she's ending it with that yo, being very like firm about it. Like, I'll have you know that it is this.
そうとも言うかな。でもさっきのたらこの方が漢字が出てるけどな。
And then Minako says, そうとも言うかな. So I love Minako in Japanese too. She's so great. The DIC dub completely butchered her character. Like, I will not forgive them for that. She's so much cooler in the Japanese version. Anyway, so to mo yu kana. So to yu would mean they say it that way. Again, it's the ko so ado words. So means like the way in which you, the listener, in this case Ami, just said the thing. So to you, the way you said it. So to mo you would mean, oh, they also say it in that way. Kana means like, I wonder if, maybe, possibly. So in good English, that's, oh, right, I think they also say that. And then Usagi says, でもさっきのたらこの方が漢字が出てるけどな. So, でも, but saki, it's really just saki, but with a small tsu in there, it's a little more colloquial. So earlier, saki no means like earlier, tarako no ho. So saki no tarako no ho, so that tarako thing earlier, but that tarako thing earlier, ga, kanji ga deteru. So kanji ga deru is more like, it like fits the mood. It's like, it really gets the sentiment across. That's kind of what it means. Kanji is like the feeling or the sensation, and then deru means like exudes. That's literally what that means, but it's pretty much it like, it fits better. Kedo, na, kedo means but. So she says but twice. She starts it with but, finishes it with but. And again, it's sort of like you're trailing off and you're being a little vague, because that's the way Japanese people are when they speak. And then the na at the end is more like, It's like that emoji with the finger on the chin. So I localize that as, I think the breakfast one you said earlier fits better.
よね。楽しみにとっておいたたらこをアルテミスが食べちゃったりするとさ、さっき食べとけば。でもテストでは×なの。
And then Minako goes, よね? And again, that yone ending of a sentence is like, it's kind of like, I know, right? On its own, that's pretty much what it is. It's like, right? That's basically what it is. Because she's being like emphatic, like the yo is firm, and then the ne is like, right, I agree with you strongly. We're on the same page here, you and I. We're both crazy blonde characters. 楽しみにとっておいた. So 楽しみに verb means I did this verb in anticipation of the joy of something. So 楽しみ is basically the noun version of the adjective 楽しい, which is fun. So it's like funness, basically, or just the noun fun. にとっておいた. So とっておく means to like take something or like set something aside for later. So 楽しみにとっておいた means like set this thing aside for later enjoyment, basically. Tarako, so the tarako that I set aside for later enjoyment. O, so a verb is going to happen to this tarako that she set aside for later enjoyment. Artemisu ga, so Artemis, her cat, ga tabechattari suru. So tabechau, again, it's that the chau version of the verb taberu, to eat, meaning like Artemisu ga tabechau means like Artemis ate it and it was a bad thing that he ate it. And or he ate it completely. In both cases, it's true. So like he ate it. He ate this tarako that I set aside for my own later enjoyment. So tari suru. So if you do a verb tari suru. It means I'm doing this verb and things like that verb. So, 楽しみにとっておいたたらこをアルテミスが食べちゃったりするとさ、so とさ、this to particle there is whenever this whole thing happens. So whenever Artemis eats, unfortunately, completely, this tarako that I had set aside for my own enjoyment in the future, and then the sa at the end. Again, we're gossiping, we're telling stories, that kind of ending to the sentence. So I localized it as, right? It's like when Artemis eats the eggs I was saving for later. So this is kind of where the tarako is still eggs, because breakfast, eggs. So that's how the whole thing ties together. See, there was a method to my madness. So the whole kotowaza earlier was butchered. You might not remember because it was several minutes ago now, but in the episode in real time, it would have just been like a few seconds earlier. So Minako said, as they say, breakfast comes too late. And then it's actually supposed to be repentance comes too late. And Usagi's like, I don't know, I think the breakfast saying actually fits a little bit better. And Minako's like, right, it's like when Artemis eats the eggs I was saving for later. And then she follows it up. And then Minako follows it up with, Sakki tabetokeba. So sakki again earlier, tabetokeba. So that whole thought is going to be tabetokeba yokatta, but the yokatta part is implied. We know that it's there. So taberu is our verb. If you drop the do and change it to tokeba yokatta, that means I should have, or I wish that I had eaten it earlier. So if only I'd eaten them sooner. And that's why the saying is breakfast comes too late. And then Ami loses her temper and she's like, demo testo de wa batsu nano. So batsu is, it's kind of a colloquialish term. It means this, basically, X. You may have seen Japanese people like they'll do a maru or a batsu. This means it's okay, this means it's no good. So yeah. Demo, but testo de wa, but in a test, that would be like absolutely a no-go. And then she's ending nano. I'm explaining this to you firmly. And I localized that as, that's not gonna fly on the test. And I went ahead and made it a little more colloquial because she is being a little more colloquial. She's usually Miss Prim and Proper, Ami, and I'm speaking very nice Japanese. But because she's losing her temper, I went ahead and made it a little slangier, a little more colloquial. And then Mako-chan tries to be the peacemaker and says, ne Ami-chan. So ne means, hey, Ami-chan, koko oshiete. So note there's no particles. You don't need particles. Koko, here, this little part. Oshiete, it's the like, please do form of oshieru, to teach. So, hey, Ami, can you show me how to do this? And then Ami says, kore wa ne. So, oh, as for this thing that's close to me, the speaker, ko suru no. So this is two instances of kosoado words with ko. So Ami, she's talking about something that's close to her, the problem that she is showing Mako-chan, so it's related to Ami at this point. So kore, as for this thing that's related to me, kore wa ne? I'm gonna be nice, this, as for this little thing here. Ko suru means you do it like this, like me, basically, the speaker, ko suru. If I said suru, it means like you do it like that thing over there. And if I say do suru, it means how do you do this? But she was saying, oh, you do it like this. And on that somewhat anticlimactic note, this concludes our part one of Watch Sailor Moon Learn Japanese. Obviously, at the pace we're going, there's no way I would make one single video that was the entire episode. It would be hours and hours long, but I will be doing the rest of this episode in separate chunks like I've done this one. So keep your eyes out for that. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check out my other Watch Sailor Moon Learn Japanese series. It's a whole series. A lot of people have been finding part one, but it is a series. There's 8. Actually, I think there's like 10 parts total technically because I also did the theme songs. So check out that. If you are a beginner, if you felt like this was whoosh, check out my Japanese for Beginners series. Thank you to all of my patrons who support this and the other series on this channel. And hopefully I'll see you in part 2 of this series. 月の光は愛のメッセージ.